Hello. Hi everyone. Welcome to the first lecture of our 2026 lecture series. Thank you all for coming. This year our series, Marylebone Minds, will explore the intellectual and creative currents that have been central to Marylebone throughout its past as well as into the modern day. Today's lecture looks at one of London's oldest art clubs, the London Sketch Club, which was once based here on Marylebone Road. We're joined by Mark Prizeman, Trustee and Honorary Secretary of the club. He's also an archivist to the London Society. He trained as an architect and he was born and raised in Marylebone. We're also joined by Anthony Cohen, who will speak after him, who's the club's current president as well as an artist and graphic designer. The lecture will last around 45 minutes. We'll also have time for questions and a discussion at the end of the lecture. But for now, sit back and enjoy. Thank you.
Yes, hello, yes. I'm Mark. I'm going to talk first of all about Marylebone and where the club existed in its various incarnations in Marylebone. So it's going to be a map thing. And then Tony, is going to tell you about the book, which will go into the flesh of the club. So at certain points I would say, well, Tony will talk about that later. So this really is so you know exactly where they were operating and the environments which they were playing. The Sketch Club, I have to start off with, the London Sketch Club was originally a 1830 sketch club which lasted all the way through the 19th century, with people like Tenniel will remember and that. And then in 1897 it split into two. And the Sketch Club were the younger rigs, and they were kind of, apparently it was about an argument about whether to have hot or cold meals after sketching. So they'd go and meet in a club or a restaurant and draw and then talk about their drawings. So they had an argument, split into two. And the other club became the Langham. So Langham's also in Marylebone, and the Sketch Club went off and went and lived, squatted in a couple of galleries in Bond Street before they moved into Marylebone properly. So just to get, we are in the parish church of Marylebone. This area is named completely after this building. And so just to remind you, this is the parish map of Marylebone, so this is where we are. So the Sketch Club first gets their first lease in number 20 there, which is St Andrew's, Wells Street. So they're down in Wells Street, right down there on Oxford Street there. This is the little front which goes off to Hanway Street. So any of you who live in Marylebone and have a F parking permit, there are 2 parking spaces in Hanway Street, which are very convenient if you want to go shopping in Tottenham Court Road. We are here in this church here. This is the Marylebone Road running along here. And then we're going to go over to here where the Sketch Club moved in 1913. So really it's 1903 to 1957, it's 54 years the Sketch Club was in Marylebone. It's now in Chelsea. And then we'll do so. So we start, this is, Tony has this picture as well, this is the Sketch Club signing a lease for its premises in Wells Street. It's about trying to sign it like the Magna Carta, so everything is theatrical, overblown, bling jewellery, kind of fake maces and stuff. So you get, Cecil Aldin, the famous dog painter, Phil May, famous Punch cartoonist, and Dudley Hardy, fantastic illustrator. They're doing a ridiculous pantomime celebrations. That's sort of the spirit of doing things. But I'm going to concentrate, Tony will talk more about these characters and what they did, and I'll also concentrate more on the map. So here we have, this is 1910. So this is Oxford Street here, Soho Square, there's Hanway Street with the 2 parish boundaries, so the parking spaces are on this side of the road. Okay, and here is Wells Street coming down here, Wells Street coming down here, and the club occupied this building here, as far as I can work out, number 97. Here already we have a department store built. This is B&H, Bourne and Hollingsworth. They're expanding up here. This is a place called Haynes, which is now, anyway, we'll go on to what that's become now. So you get a little bit closer into, oh, it's a bit thing there, yeah. But fantastic these maps you can get, but you know, just the mixture of these tiny little dwellings and places and little pubs and alleys. And then these big department stores. See, they haven't built Bourne and Hollingsworth here yet, but it's how they're beginning, it's kind of pushing it out. So the club got a lease there in a building which was run by a man called Wood, Paul Wood. He ran a club on the top floor called the Punch Bowl Club. And the sketch club rented one floor, and then when they'd finished doing their drawing, they'd go upstairs and get drunk in the Punch Bowl Club. And then Mr. Wood, who cooked for them, kind of let them actually take it over. So then they took over upstairs as well. So this is Higham. So this is Wells Street in here. This is what becomes Bourne and Hollingsworth here. So it's the early incarnation of Bourne and Hollingsworth. This is Oxford Street down here. And this is Hyams, who were outfitters, you know, for ladies and schools and cells and stuff. So around the corner is this kind of seedy world of little dark studios and the sketch club. So this is the Wells Street studio, which you can see it's in a big building, whatever it was a warehouse or something or other, but it was there had been, on the site of Hyams, there had been little houses, little Georgian houses, but gradually they're all being pushed back, and this is their first kind of leased studio. This is what it's like now. So they would have been down there. This is now going to be the Harry Potter thing. This is the remains of the B&H building, Bourne and Hollingsworth. It's now GAM or something. Yeah. So, you know, it all goes back, pushing back old London. And then they move up, 1913, they move up to the Marylebone studio, which is quite difficult to say. So you go through these gates, but they went through that passage, and they were behind there. So this is on the Marylebone Road. So we have Marylebone Station here, the original underground station there, it's now become a store there. This is the Grand Central Hotel, which then became British Rail for most of the 60s and 70s. And there's the club marked there, tucked in there. So that archway is there. They went then through this little alleyway through to the building at the back there. This is St Marylebone Grammar School. There's playground in the middle there, to which our barman went, Martin the barman went to school there. And I was talking about it to him last night. You see, there's the grammar school, a little bit more detail there. The funny little group of buildings, quite difficult to work out how they all actually worked. The Great Central Hotel, which had a great affinity because it had a nice ballroom, which we'll look at later. That's where my grandfather lived. That's where I was brought up, in that house there. I'm going to show you some photographs taken from Knox Street over to Wyndham Street and round here. So this end of those I took when I was 17. So, you know, so this is the aerial photograph here, 1947. You can see the shadow of the gateway there. So the club's there, and this is the school here, and the Great Central Hotel there, which is now re-emerged as the Landmark Hotel. And of course, the whole area was radically changed by the building of Marylebone Station, which happened quite late in the 1890s. But it was one of the first railway things where they had to rehouse all the people who had been removed from all that. There's just acres of nice housing there. So everyone's moved into the adjacent houses. So Marylebone went really downhill. So when my kind of parents pitched up in here, they bought a house. The Portland estate were paying off their death duties. They were selling off the northern bits. Pensioners described the northern bit of Marylebone as not really worth any consideration. It's far too slummy. They bought a house that had kind of 5 sitting tenants in it, the last of which had departed when I was about 12. But it was all caused by this kind of funny railway station, who was mainly thrust through by a certain Lord Warncliffe, to which the Warncliffe Ballroom, which is in the Grand Hotel. So this is the Grand Hotel being built in 1899. And so that's coming up. So, you know, 10 years later, the sketch club's pitching up there. The Marylebone Station is really doing that well, but they've got a very grand hotel. This is the Warncliffe Ballroom. It's now turned into a rather nasty plastic wedding centre. But so it's luxury. And then also, just on the other side of it, this is a photograph taken by my grandfather out of his flat window. This is EXP2, which is the second prototype Bentley, which was assembled in Chadworth Mews, opposite, just off Melcombe Street, with this lady. And I both went to Melcombe Toys, just opposite there. If you go down to the blue plaque, so they're building a car and then road testing it round Dorset Square. This is diagnosed, it's taken from where the entrance to the Sketch Club was. This is the Yorkshire Stingo, which is it was a place where they had the Society for the Preservation of the Black Poor of London. It's where all the Yorkshiremen used to meet, and it had a kind of huge garden, karate went there. It was demolished when they built the Marylebone flyover. But it was also where Shillebier's omnibus, the first bus service in the world, set off to go to the Bank of England. And so that's also 1920. That last photograph of the Bentley was also 1919, 1920. And here's a watercolour of it in 1960, just after the Sketch Club had departed in 1957 for Chelsea. This is a view from the top of the building next to the Sketch Club. The Sketch Club would have been in this building here. This is the grammar school, which Martin, the barman, says that being in the playground was basically just like being in Colditz. And he said that to his head. This is what replaced it, the Woolworths building, by Seaford. Colonel Seaford, also responsible for Centre Point and other lovely gems around London. So that's it. There's sort of quarter of the hotel there, so the Sketch Club would have been in there. There's the school remaining there. Just ending this is a photograph, this is the Heath Post Office, just up round the corner, 1977 or so. Yeah, that's it. Sort of the kind of griminess and grottiness to London, to it there, which is perhaps something modern residents wouldn't recognise. This is Wyndham Street. This is another one. This is back at British Home Stores. They're knocking the buildings down in the 60s to build main car parks and things. It's now being completely redeveloped as kind of faux Georgian houses. So that's just an introduction to the environments in which the Sketch Club went. I can now hand you over to Tony, who will keep on the music.
Can I just...
I think that's it. Yep.
Right, good evening. Welcome to this talk about the history of the Sketch Club, which is going to be illustrated by posters and photographs and original artwork from our archives. And it's based on a book that I produced to celebrate the club's 125th anniversary a couple of years ago. And I've got a few copies of this book, which I can serve you after the show. So, the London Sketch Club was founded on April Fool's Day in 1898. It was a breakaway from the Langham Sketching Club, as Mark has told you, as a result of an argument about hot and cold dinners. The Remainers preferred cold dinners, and the hot dinner rebels left to form the London Sketch Club. The principal movers were Phil May in the snazzy jacket, and Phil May was a larger-than-life character, very renowned as a cartoonist, a prankster, a snappy dresser, who relied as much on his charm as he did on drink. Cecil Aldine, up the ladder, was famous for his drawings of dogs, and Dudley Hardy, poster artist, was best known for his Gaiety Girl posters. And we've already seen this picture of the signing of the lease. Phil May was very reluctant to sign anything, but he was dragged along to this on the condition that it was going to be a ceremony, and it certainly was. And this is the menu for their first dinner, the formation of the club. It's a 4-shilling dinner, but it's a monster of a dinner, a wonderful dinner. And this is a portrait of the first president of the club, drawn here by Tom Brown. George Hayti was a painter, designer of Paisley textiles, and known for making very long, tedious speeches, for which he was mercilessly teased. Alongside Phil May, John Hassall was one of the most influential members of the club, and was instrumental in drawing up the rules and ends. He was also one of the most successful and popular poster artists of his day. I have a picture of him later on, somewhere or other. We've drifted on a bit further than I imagined. Anyway, so another early immigrant from the Langham was dapper Robert Sorber, whose painterly style was in complete contrast to these two poster artists. This is typical of the happy mix of commercial illustrators and painters in the club at the time. Sorber specialised in female beauties. He had a vast wardrobe of period costumes and was said to be a cross between Watteau and France Howell. So here we have John Hassall. And you can see him standing at his easel, and this is one of his famous Gaiety Girl posters, or follies. And here we see Tom Brown, another one of the former members of the founder members of the club. He was one of the most popular members of the young club. He was intense and at the same time very convivial. He became well known as a humorous cartoonist, working for the illustrated papers and later in advertising. One of his most famous creations is the Johnny Walker character, dressed in hunting red and sporting a monocle. Years after his early death at 39, his studio in Blackheath was taken over by the painter John Bradley, who turned it into a museum. The first part of the London Sketch Club evenings was 2 hours spent sketching or painting from memory and imagination, inspired by one of a choice of 2 given subjects, which were often a mixture of scenes or, on the other hand, emotions. For instance, a quarrel or by the bridge. The subjects were announced in advance on a yearly printed card along with other club business. All the work was discussed and followed by a hearty dinner. And this system carried on until the 1940s and was regarded as an essential exercise for working members. And here we see them at work on their sketches. And you'll see silhouettes on the back wall of members, and this became something that was taken to all the clubs. So now you'll see later on that in Dilke Street, our current home, we have replicas of these, and we've brought them up to date. So there are silhouettes stretching from right at the beginning right to the present day of presidents and entertainers and other members of the club. In this photograph, we can see Dudley Hardy and John Hassall standing at the back at the easels. Members loved to dress up, and they held regular themed evenings, tramps evenings, old soldiers' nights, pirates' nights, and savage nights. They invited members from the closely associated club, the Savage, which was a great source of honorary members recruited for their talents as after-dinner entertainers. So here we are into the 1900s. And the club moved to permanent premises in World Street in 1903. And here is a view of its rather cosy interior. After dinner, brother sketchers, some in fancy dress, enjoy dinner and discussion, otherwise known to them as a smoker. Among the sketchers is Arthur Conan Doyle, standing at the back. He joined in 1899, although not an artist. His father had been an illustrator. Conan Doyle introduced Baden-Powell to the sketch club in 1903. He was a keen, ambidextrous sketcher who supplemented his meagre army pay by sending drawings to illustrate journals, and of course went on to found the Boy Scout movement. This is a very beautiful poster by Edmund Dulac. Edmund Dulac was born in France and came to London at the age of 22. Elegantly dressed but distinctly bohemian, he was a brilliant book illustrator, part of what was known as the fairy school of the club. This referred to the choice of subjects rather than their sexual persuasion. He illustrated many books, among them The Arabian Nights, Jane Eyre and Sleeping Beauty. He also designed several postage stamps, most notably those to commemorate the coronation of Queen Elizabeth in 1953. And this is a poster by John Hassall, and this is one of the last smokers held before the move to the new premises. And it illustrates the members' rather curious obsession with dressing up as tramps. So here we are in 1910, and this poster, Half a Mo Kaiser by Cecil Wade, was drawn in 10 minutes, and it appeared in the Weekly Dispatch in aid of the paper's Tobacco for Troops Fund, which raised about £250,000. Later on, this cartoon reappeared in 1936 for the Second World War, this time with the caption, Afamo Hitler. Two of the most outstanding members of the time were W. Heath Robinson and H.M. Bateman. Here we see H.M. Bateman, and this is a rather typical cartoon of his. Many of his cartoons were The Man Who, which appeared in the Tatler. H.M. Bateman joined the club in 1906 at the age of 19. He was a shy and introverted man, the son of domineering parents, but it became remarkably successful, earning around £5,000 a year in the 20s. And this is William Heath Robinson, who joined the club in 1910. He came from a very artistic family. His father, Thomas Robinson, was an illustrator, and his two brothers, Charles and Tom, were also artists and members of the club. His inventions were hugely popular. His creations became his trademark, and his name entered the English language to describe outlandish contraptions. This one, you can see, is called the Subzep Marylebone. Yeah. So the club moved to new premises in 246A Marylebone Road in 1913 and remained there till 1957. The building was an ordinary terraced house, approached by passing under an arch, as Mark has described, led along the passage to the front door, which in fact was the condemned cell door at the Old Bailey, you can see on the right. It was later replaced by the door from Newgate Prison, which is now in the studio at Dilke Street in Chelsea. And this is the arch shortly before the building was demolished. And here are some pictures of the interior of the new studio that they moved into after the members have moved in, and all the paraphernalia from Wells Street, including the collection of pewter and theatrical props, pikes, shields, and swordfish teeth were installed. John Hassall complained that the walls were all too clean and promptly lit a bonfire to give it a more mellow look. And once again, you can see the silhouettes that were brought from Wells Street. One of the most exciting discoveries that I made while researching the book was a collection of 23 original illustrations. Alex Johnson Wilson was an honorary member. He wasn't an artist, and he requested an example of work from some of the members to put together in a book. All of them are reproduced in the book that I produced, and they give a clear indication of the high standard of art and illustration of the time. This is Wilson on the left, and he's talking to Leslie on the right, the bald-headed man, and they're comparing tonsures. So, first of all, John Hassall. This is an Indian by John Hassall, who was one of the best-known artists of his day, and certainly one of the most prolific. Georgie Studdy originally worked as a stockbroker, but always intended to become an artist. And he was the creator of Bonzo the Dog, which was remarkably successful. This is a drawing by Tony Sarge, who was a German-American illustrator, author and designer, and when he moved to America, was regarded as the father of American puppetry. Kenneth D. Shoesmith was a self-taught artist who specialised in maritime scenes. And this is Charles Robinson, the brother of W. Heath Robinson. Unlike his brother, he developed a delicate watercolour style that was ideally suited to the books of fairy tales that he illustrated. Barry Ball, as he was known, created several images that were used on First World War recruitment posters. And this is Joseph Harker, who was a scenery painter and a theatrical designer who had the honour of having his name used by Bram Stoker for the character Jonathan Harker in his novel Dracula. Arthur Ferrier is one of the foremost magazine illustrators of the 20s and 30s. He invented what was known as the Ferrier girl for the troops, always in the pink of perfection. And here we have W. Heath Robinson, known for his humorous contraptions, but he also produced many sensitive illustrations in both colour and black and white for children's books, such as Bill the Minder and The Water Babies. Now, we go into the 20s. The Great Central Hotel opened for business in 1899 and was at 222 Marylebone Road, as we know, a few doors from the club. At the Warncliffe Rooms in the hotel, the club held their annual fancy dress balls, which were in the 20s a highlight of every debutante's diary. The balls would go on until the early hours with prizes for the best costumes. And there is the hotel. And this is a Charles Robinson poster for a Warncliffe dance. And here we see some of the guests in fancy dress at the 1923 ball. The tickets cost a guinea, and they included dinner. Here you see two invitations to smoking conversazioni, as they were called, by George Studdy. The top features Bonzo the dog, his famous creation. You can see him at the bottom there of the first poster. Bonzo the dog, he appeared in the Bonzo Annual, which ran for 25 years, and was the star of 26 films. Bonzo later gave his name to the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band. And here is a John Hassall dance poster showing an unlikely couple and the curious addition of a painter's palette and two bills, which are fallen out of his pocket for rates and tax floating around them, possibly alluding to the precarious nature of the artistic life. 1930s. This poster was designed by Cecil Wade and shows two leading figures of the club. George Pulby, with the big moustache and the white hair, the stained glass designer and master of ceremonies, and he's on the floor, and Arnold Beauvais is portrayed as Britannia with a brush and palette instead of a trident and shield. The Sketch Club welcomed entertainers to their dinners. Many of them came from the Savage Club. Charlie Chaplin first visited the club in 1906 as an unknown 17-year-old actor. He left for the United States in 1910 and returned to visit the club in 1930 as an international star. Stanley Holloway, on the left-hand side, was a famous music hall artist who joined the London Sketch Club in 1934 and often entertained at dinners on Friday evenings. The other character is Clay Thomas, who was a professional singer all his life, an immaculate dresser, and best remembered for his rendition of the club song, Say Watchman, What of the Night, which became the club's anthem and is sung at the end of every dinner, still to this day, a dreadful, mournful tune, which we will try and sing. This is a view of the inside of the Marylebone Club, showing Baden-Powell's silhouette and the Sketchers Arms sign that is now outside our bar in Dilke Street. Every Friday night, Mabel, you can see here, cooked dinners, plain but filling, occasionally toxic for the Sketchers. Here she is sharing a joke with Victor McClure, a punch cartoonist and a great raconteur. Here are two magnificent posters by Arnold Beauvais. Beauvais was a talented opera singer as well as an artist. He finally decided to devote his life to design, but continued to entertain the club with his singing. And that's another one of his posters. So, the 1940s. During the Second World War, many members served in the army. The armed forces, rather. Lee Kenyon was one of the RAF officers who was involved in the famous Great Escape from Stalag Luft 3. Although he didn't manage to join the escape, he forged documents and made sketches of the construction of the tunnel and camp life. The drawings, packed into an airtight container made of old milk tins and hidden in an abandoned escape tunnel, were recovered much later and used for reference for the film The Great Escape in 1963. Heath Robinson was 67 when the Second World War broke out, but continued to illustrate his invented weapons and machinery as he did during the First World War. This is his hit or missile gun. He died in 1944, the same year as George Pulby, another illustrious member. In this poster at the top, we see a member confronted by all the movements in art. A club member, he's confused and bewildered. Is this the reactionary view of art similar to that of Alfred Munnings, president of the Royal Academy at the time? Munnings, like many of the club's members, was a figurative painter and a fierce critic of modernism. Infamously, in a drunken after-dinner speech at the RA, he told his audience that Winston Churchill had once asked him, "Alfred, if you met Picasso coming down the street, would you join me in kicking him in his something something?" "Yes, sir, I would," Munnings claimed to have replied. And here we see the London Sketch Club live drawing session, photographed for an edition of the Picture Post. This we've already looked at. This is an etching showing the outside of the London Sketch Club on Marylebone Road before the building was demolished. The club had occupied the building from 1913 to 1957, when Woolworth decided to buy the building and bought out the club's lease. With a substantial sum in the bank, the club was able to buy the freehold on the building that it now occupies in Dulac Street in Chelsea. It was an inspired decision. The building was a remarkably good investment and situated in an area that has a great artistic heritage. The street next to the club has been home to many artists. Both Sargent and Whistler had studios built there, although Whistler subsequently had to sell his after a year to pay court fees. Oscar Wilde lived at 34 Tite Street, and Mark Twain on the corner with Tedworth Square. I remember George Dixon, in the top picture, organised the move and is seen here with the removal lorry outside Dulac Street. We see 3 men and a head. E.J. Odell was one of Philip May's reliable drinking companions, an actor, a member of the Langham, the Savage and the London Sketch Club, and a considerable nuisance. With his slouch hat and long white beard, he was a dignified and impressive figure. For many years he had managed to exist without any income, without doing a stroke of work. He had once been an actor, but it was so many years before that not even the oldest inhabitant had ever seen him on the stage. Amongst the statuettes in the back of the lorry was another mustachioed character with the inscribed title, Early Bohemian. 7 of these heads now reside on the shelf above the dumb waiter at the back of our studio. The London Sketch Club currently occupies the rear of this building on Dulac Street, while the facade here faces the Thames on the Chelsea Embankment. The building was designed in 1879 by Richard Fenner Spears for Sir Robert Collier, later Lord Monkswell, a former Attorney General. His son John Collier was a pre-Raphaelite artist and portrait painter, among whose subjects were Charles Darwin, Lord Kitchener and Rudyard Kipling. His large studio, which the club now uses, was on the first floor at the back of the house on Dulac Street, connected by a passage which runs from the main house. This is the passage, with a portrait, a wonderful, very big portrait of John Hassall, one of the founder members that I mentioned. And this is some other pictures of the inside of Dulac Street. You see the outside. It's now painted a wonderful terracotta colour. And these are a selection of artworks from all periods, mainly the earlier periods of members' work. There's some wonderful things here. There's this is a Dulac. There's a Barton Powell behind the lamp, and lots of other wonderful things. This is the studio now at Dulac Street, and you can see the silhouettes once again around the wall. It's a wonderful light studio that John Collier used, and we're very lucky to be able to use it. It's well used. This is another picture of the studio with these wonderful sort of 50s lights, which we still have in the studio, and just a picture of the screen that we recently renovated. Now, at the time of the move, the average age of the members was older than it should have been, and few younger members were being groomed to take over the running of the club. During the period between the 60s to the 90s, the club continued to run rather along old-fashioned lines of the post-war years, with little regard for current trends. The fortunes of the club started to look up in the 90s, when several younger members joined the club, and there was a new sense of vitality. Hugh Gilbert, a photographer who had been chairman of the Chelsea Arts Club, became honorary member and brought with him several Arts Club members. He inherited a rather dilapidated gentleman's club, which he turned into a less dilapidated gentleman's club, and led it successfully into the new century. He documented live classes and parties with his photography, and in particular his panoramic style. Some more pictures parties, and here we see Martin Barman, who Mark talked about, resident of this parish.
That's you.
And we can see, yes,
All right, it's you.
Mr. Hugh Gilbert. And I think on the previous picture, you'll see Mark on the far right, or far left rather, with long hair. This is fairly typical of what used to go on in those days. Organised by Stephen King, this event is very much in the spirit of the Tramps Nights of earlier years. He said, we tried to make sure everything was coned off and there were plenty of flashing orange warning lights. Roy Pettit won the prize for the worst case of builder's bum. I think the prize was an old shovel. So, present time. So this is a picture of the studio and a portrait session that's going on there. And into the new studio, the club has survived well. The old building has been well maintained, and we are gradually improving some of the facilities without spoiling the very special character of the building. We hold weekly members' drawing nights and open classes on Tuesdays. Occasionally there are master classes in the studio with specialists, and we hold members' exhibitions every season. Our spring exhibition actually opens tomorrow, and you're all welcome. We also hire out the premises for parties and events, which helps to keep us afloat. The professional range in membership has broadened and now includes not only artists, cartoonists and illustrators, but also architects and graphic designers. And here's just a small selection of some of the work that we produce. But the major change is that after being an all-male stronghold for so long, the club moved into the modern world in 2022. And welcomed in women members. Some of the more archival members were reluctant to be dragged into the present, but they either joined in or just faded away. We continue to hold themed Friday night dinners during the winter for members and guests with music and entertainment. They're all well attended and lots of fun. There's a regular Burns night and a Christmas lunch and the occasional Sunday afternoon concert recital. So, all this material is taken from a book which I produced with Mark a couple of years ago. And I have a few copies of this which you can buy if you like.
You can sign.
And I might even sign, yes. So that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed the talk. Are there any questions for both of us? Yes.
The plaque on the front door on Duke Street, is it from the original club, or the club that was in Marylebone? Because I noticed it was
The brass plate.
yeah, the brass plaque.
But there's a picture of the old what's said to be the condemned cell door.
Yeah.
I think
is
it
that the
is.
same one that came from
I don't think
Marylebone?
they'd make another one. I don't think they'd bother to make another one, would they?
No, it's the same one. I was just wondering.
I think it is. I think it did come. It does.
It's very simple.
Is it
Yeah.
painted?
Who makes your dinners for you now?
Well, Mark used to. Because Mark used to have an office in the building. Where he used to make after sketching dinners. But now one of the members, Lisa Marie, she makes the suppers. The actual dinners. Yeah, this is Lisa Marie. These dinners here, we actually get in. There are a couple of Mark's daughter, who's a wonderful chef. She sometimes caters them, and we have another person who also caters them. These dinners become the responsibility of a particular member, and it's up to them to actually advertise it, get people to come in, and organise the actual theme of the dinner. So the last one I did as President's dinner was, Christmas lunch we had, which was in honour of Bonzo the dog. And so the one that I followed up with was in honour of the Bonzo dog Doodah band, which logically followed on. So yeah, we have a wonderful kitchen in the building, and we have a dumb waiter that comes up to the studio. So yeah, we're well equipped. Yeah.
A couple of questions. I thought I saw a reference once tried to 175 Pond Street on some of the
Yes.
pictures you showed. And also, what happened to the Langham Sketch Club?
The Langham still exists. They shared our premises for a while, and then there was a sort of falling out once again. And
Well, they reappeared at the club in the 50s because they'd been bombed out of their place. And they're very distant, didn't want to get involved at all. So they maintained this complete distance. Well, it's pointless and not paying us any money. Instead, we got rid of them during COVID.
Bond Street was prior to Wells Street.
It's the modern gallery. There were a couple of galleries moved. The modern name was there before they got the piece in Wells Street. That's 1903, so they've got 6 years of hanging around in Bond Street.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How many?
Can
Sorry.
you give us an idea about how it funds itself these days? But back in the early days, it sounded like a much smaller scale thing, and how on earth did they, afford a lease on a building?
We don't have a great deal. We don't have a lot of members. We have about nearly 200, I would say, and if that.
No, about 125.
125. So we finance ourselves by renting out the premises for the shows, for classes.
Was that always the case? Back in the early days, it doesn't.
I doubt it.
No, there's a lot about being quite reluctant to let off when they bought Dilk Street, rather than letting off people. I think they basically used to use the building all the time as their club place. And I think that, from looking at the maps and looking at things, I think the place in Marylebone Road was basically just a room or two like this. It was quite a Stephen, someone in this room, has dug out a lot of plans of these clubs. So they're just little rooms. But I think, London was full of people swarming little spaces and things. I think it wasn't a huge area thing. There were lots of people doing that sort of thing. So it was quite a...
Yeah.
How many silhouettes are there? Are they all on the wall?
Well, in the book, we've got all the silhouettes.
No, a lot of silhouettes never came over from Marylebone. The ones in the Dilk Street aren't necessarily the same as the ones which were in Marylebone. So, for instance, if you look closely at the back of my photographs, everyone's smoking a pipe with the smoke coming out of it. So when I got my sort of done, I wanted to clean the smoke. So I'm the only one with clean the smoke in the silhouettes now. They all are copies, but a lot of people didn't come over. So
And is there a limit in that silhouette,
we're going to make them smaller.
They're all well, the ones that currently, they're all identified in the book, and some of them are quite interesting. We've got copies of all the original members: Starwood, Cecil Alding, Tom Brown, Dudley Hardy, and so on. So Mark did a wonderful job in actually identifying all of them and writing their short biography, who they were.
You haven't listened to the ones which are missing, you see elsewhere.
How do we arrange a visit?
Well, you can come tomorrow evening. It's a private view.
Circle line, it's quite easy. You get up the circle line, walk down the road.
If you look on our website, it gives information about the concerts that we have, which are open to the public, and also private view, which is tomorrow. Those are the only really the opportunities.
The concerts are lovely. That's on Sunday afternoons. They're really good.
There's one at the end of this month, the violinist and the pianist in the studio. Yeah,
Interesting to see the artwork as well.
yeah, we'll come tomorrow night. Yeah.
Do you have much overlap with the Chelsea Arts Club or other artists' clubs in London?
Yes, the Chelsea Arts Club is referred to by our members as the other place.
No, another place. Another place.
Another place.
Not the other place.
what I call it the other place. Yeah.
For many years, you had a reciprocal agreement with Trustee Arts Club. Does that not exist anymore?
As far as balls go, it does not exist anymore, but the president of the Chelsea Arts Club and the president of the Chelsea Sketch Club are given honorary memberships of so there is a relationship. A lot of the members are also members of the Chelsea Arts Club.
Sorry, you had a question?
You referenced the sketches of the Scarlet of Three.
Yeah.
My personal interest, my uncle was a prisoner there and helped the escapees. I was just wondering, are the sketches in an archive or?
Yes, that we do have some. I think Stephen, who's sitting behind you, is our archivist.
He has them in his book.
Yes.
He'll be able to help you with that. Yeah.
Is the Savage Club still going?
Yes.
Yeah.
They still work in the old Liberal Club?
No, they got chucked out of the Liberal Club for not having women members of the Savage Club. They had a wonderful bar there.
I know.
Thames, and they had wonderful drawings. Good lots of sketch club members have met. Drawings which they would put a plate over a candle and then draw a soot. So they've got those in glass cabinets. They're exquisite objects. Hassall and soot. You have to come on and talk to Ian Collins.
All right.
To see the camp. Sorry.
Okay, that's it? Yeah.
So you said there's a private view tomorrow, but does that mean there's a longer exhibition that we can see if we can't come tomorrow?
It's best to come to the evening because the other times we register out to classes and things. It's quite difficult to get in and no one can.
It will be up though for a couple of months, so I mean, if you come to a concert, it'll be up. Yeah. Good. So, if anyone would like to buy the book, I'm very happy to accommodate.